We're doing it again! Since our last lift ranking of Steamboat, lifts have either been removed and replaced, added, or improved on. This means that our previous ranking is a bit outdated now, and with all the full steam ahead improvements that happened over the past 3 years, it makes sense to re-rank the lifts because our opinions have changed over time. This time, instead of ranking the lifts from worst to best again, each lift will be ranked in tier list form on a scale from 1 to 5. That will be a recurring thing for this channel because there are plenty of lifts that have redeeming qualities and don't necessarily deserve to be at the bottom of the list. Now, let's get right into it. Without further ado,
we're twin skiing lifts and rides, and this is the lift ranking for Steamboat!
RUE. I can't believe it's been over 8 years since we rode this lift, but here we are now. This 1977 Yandelmo runs near the upper lift line of Storm Peak Express, but starts below the 4 Points restaurant. If you remember the previous Steamboat ranking, I had it lower on the list simply because I didn't ride it, but that wasn't a valid excuse for putting it so low. After seeing y'all's thoughts in the comments, we finally took the time to get back on this lift, and wow, this is a great lift. There's so many glades off this lift, but do be careful as some of the trees are really close to each other. Even though it's a 10-minute ride, you get great views of the valley and the lift is almost never crowded. RUE gets a perfect 5 out of 5.
Bashor. Yes, I finally pronounced it right. Thank you for reminding me, guys. Anyway, this 1974 Yan Double is Steamboat's oldest remaining lift and serves Maverick's Halfpipe and, if you can reach it, Rabbit Ears Terrain Park. It's also one of the areas where the Steamboat Springs Winter Sports Club does their race training. Besides the Halfpipe, the Bashor run is fun to race down because of how smooth it is, so it's a great place to do some time trials if you're really into improving your speed. The one downside I have with this lift is that it's only open on weekends, but you can still reach the top of Bashor Bowl from the Christie Peak Express via Jess Cutoff or Sits. This lift gets a 3 out of 5.
Burgess Creek. This 2004 Lightner Poma Triple is one of the main egress lifts to Thunderhead, starting at the base of Storm Peak. While it's mainly used for egress, there's a handful of trails off this lift and Elkhead Express since they end directly across from each other. You can take either Skyline or Velvet to get to Moonlight if you're going to the Sundown area, or Rainbow if you're going back to Storm Peak. There's also some more intermediate and advanced trails, but they're mostly accessible from Thunderhead. This lift gets a 3.5 out of 5.
Christie Peak Express. This 2007 Lightner Palma High Speed 6 is the sole out-of-base chairlift at the boat. There are 2 unload areas on this lift, an angled mid-station to access beginner terrain and a terrain park, basically taking over Preview's job, and the top station serving some beginner trails, but mostly intermediate and advanced trails. This lift has had some improvements over the last few years. 1, the lower section was realigned when Wild Blue was built, and the loading setup was switched to inline loading because of that. 2, the number of chairs was reduced to increase the loading interval and minimize misloads, which seems to work really well. On the other hand, the speed was toned down a bit, which doesn't make sense to me considering that some other 6-packs have similar chair spacing and can run full speed without an issue. Now that we have Wild Blue shuttling beginners to Greenhorn Ranch, this lift isn't slowing down or stopping as much as it did in the past. Granted, it still slows or stops every once in a while, but it isn't as excessive as some of the other out-of-base lifts I've ridden. So while the downgrade in speed is a bit disappointing, Steamboat did as much as they could to keep this lift running efficiently, so the lift is getting a 3.5 out of 5.
Elkhead Express. This 2016 Doppelmayr high-speed quad is another egress lift to Thunderhead, starting near the bottom of the Sundown Express. Previously, a slower Yang quad ran into this location, but this one's a quick ride back to Thunderhead. Like Burgess Creek, there's another set of trails off this lift like Sunnyside, Arc, and Tower, but again, most of the terrain is accessible from Thunderhead. This lift gets a 4 out of 5. 4 Points. This 1983 Yan Triple is actually the Storm Peak Triple, but was shortened to the current 4 Points Lodge when Storm Peak Express came in. This is a great lift to use if Storm Peak gets crowded, because it basically serves the same terrain. Also, for no reason, I just get hungry when I pass the restaurant off this lift and Storm Peak Express. This lift gets a 3.5 out of 5.
Greenhorn Ranch Express. This 2022 Doppelmayr high-speed quad serves the Greenhorn Ranch Learning Center, as well as a mini terrain park on Rough Rider. This is by far one of the nicest beginner lifts anywhere. Having a detachable lift as a beginner lift increases loading efficiency, as well as creating a less intimidating environment for beginners. Considering that Greenhorn Ranch is further up the mountain instead of at the base where the beginner area used to be, this was a substantial improvement for the beginner experience. The lift also comes with automatic safety bars. That's just a nice little feature. This is a really nice improvement over the beginner area at the base, but when we're comparing every lift with one another, this lift doesn't get you anywhere, and it isn't high enough to reach other important areas. That's what the Thunderhead lift is for. That earns the lift a 3 out of 5. Mahogany Ridge Express. This 2023 Lightner Palma high-speed quad opened up a new expert terrain expansion and allows you to access Steamboat's hardest runs in Fish Creek Canyon. If you don't want to do Fish Creek Canyon, Edge of the World and the lift line are your best bet, though Edge of the World has some smooth parts, unlike the lift line, which is all moguls. Some of Pony Express's terrain, like Middle Rim and Outlaw, are accessible from this lift, and is one of 2 ways to get into Mahogany Ridge. I personally recommend taking Fairway, as it is nice and smooth, and you get to ski through the trees, making the run feel exciting. The one drawback I have with this area is that to exit Mahogany Ridge, you have to take a flat traverse to the top of Pony Express, but that's just a small part of an otherwise excellent terrain expansion. Huge game changer for the resort, 5 out of 5. Morningside. This 1996 Garaventa C-Tech Triple serves an expansion on the backside of the resort, with many intermediate and advanced runs through the trees, so there are so many different routes to take. One thing I love about this pod is that the trails are named after things you would do in the morning, like alarm clock, snooze bar, hot cakes, jump start, wake up call, and several others. Another nice thing about this area is that when it's warm enough and not crowded, you'll see a bunch of wildlife come out and visit, like Bacon the Squirrel, Pancake the Gray Jay, Huevos the Mountain Chickadee, Waffle the Stellar's Jay, even Sausage the Chipmunk. Yes, each different species of wildlife gets a breakfast food name. There may be some repeats, but I just love seeing the birds and squirrels come out and visit. Unfortunately, on this trip, I did not see any squirrels and birds. They were either in hibernation mode, or the crowd scared them away, which during one of my days on this trip, the line was pretty long. Besides that, this pod has a special place in my heart, and I will always look forward to skiing this terrain every time I go to the boat. Also, I can't be talking about Morningside without talking about the ski jump in the middle of the lift line. You really get some good air if you jump off it the right way. 5 out of 5.
Pony Express. This 1998 Garaventa C-Tech high-speed quad is part of another expansion 2 years after Morningside. This lift serves some of the best terrain at the boat. The lift line gives you a good workout, like Middle Rib and Outlaw, but you also have Longhorn, Wapiti, Half-Hitch, Flying Z, Chaps, Chuckwagon, even WJW. There are also a few glades off this lift, like Diamond Hitch and Harry Park. The lift runs really fast and hardly has a line. 3 years later, this is still my favorite section of Steamboat because of how many different routes you can take, and the fact that this lift is a walk-on most of the time. This lift gets a 5 out of 5.
South Peak. This 1984 Yan Triple is one form of egress from Sunshine, but it only ends at Rendezvous Lodge. You'll only use it if you ski below Sunshine, which may be only once or twice a day, because there's a Rendezvous Way run to get to the lodge, bypassing the lift entirely. Nothing else to say here, 2.5 out of 5 for this guy.
Steamboat Gondola. This 2019 Doppelmayr 8-person gondola is the main out-of-base lift of the boat, ascending up to Thunderhead Peak. In 2021, the lower terminal was moved out of the gondola building and onto the slopes where the magic carpets previously were. Now you don't have to walk all the way across the plaza to get on the gondola, since now the lower station is right where you pop your skis off. So that's an improvement all around, but this lift is not without its drawbacks. Most of the lift line is situated along a ridgeline, so when it gets windy, the gondola has to shut down. It happens every once in a while, and sometimes it will be the only lift on wind hold when everything else works fine. There honestly isn't much Steamboat can do because of the geography of the terrain. The wind seems to naturally hit that area. Another issue is crowding. This gondola is by far the most popular lift of the boat, and many people tend to go straight to it first, so the morning lines can get long, but it usually clears up by the afternoon. Besides the drawbacks, this is a decently fast gondola and offers some of the best views of the valley, so I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. Storm Peak Express. This 1992 Doppelmayr high-speed quad is the main chairlift that goes up to Storm Peak and has the most vertical of the chairlifts of the boat. Most of the runs off this lift are visible from downtown, especially the Storm Peak face. There's also Tornado, Cyclone, Twister, Vortex, and Dropout for extended difficulty. This is one of 2 access points to Morningside via Frying Pan and Cowboy Coffee. Because Storm Peak is one of the most popular sections of Steamboat, lift lines can get long. The line moves relatively fast because the lift doesn't slow or stop often, so the lift gets a 4.5 out of 5. Sundown Express. This 1992 Doppelmayr high-speed quad is the main ingress lift to Sunshine Peak, but it offers more than just getting you up to the peak. The Sundown lift line has killer moguls, the o'clock runs are great, and there are several glades around the area. Also, this is another access point to Morningside, and as of the 2023-24 season, there are now 3 lifts terminating on Sunshine Peak, which means that the top of the lift gets cluttered at times. On the plus side, the crowds do spread out because there are so many different routes to go, and the fast pace of this lift means that the lines move quickly. While this lift does have its moments, there's no doubt it's one of the best lifts of the boat, so the lift gets a 4.5 out of 5.
Sunshine Express. This 2006 Palma high-speed quad is the main lift in the Sunshine Pod and came from the canyon side of Park City, where it previously operated as Tombstone Express. I like this area because I skied these runs a lot when I was younger, and there are so many shortcuts through the trees to get from cruiser run to cruiser run. So yes, I have a soft spot for Sunshine, but it's not without its flaws. Because it's a popular intermediate terrain pod, the trails have a tendency to get crowded, and the Sunshine Express becomes a bottleneck. The lift is likely going to be replaced with a high-speed 6 in the coming years, which would help with crowd flow, but also for the beginners that come from Wild Blue. The lift gets a 4 out of 5.
Thunderhead Express. This 1997 Doppelmayr high-speed quad is the main alternative to the Steamboat Gondola if it shuts down due to wind, and it comes with a variety of difficulty levels. There's Concentration, Vagabond, Betwixt, and many others. It also features my favorite green run of all time. Why not? There are so many switchbacks with steep shortcuts, and it's perfect for beginners outside of Greenhorn Ranch. Halfway down Why Not is a teepee, and what's Steamboat without the teepee? It's like an icon for this particular section of the mountain. The excellent scenery with the fast lift speed and low crowds most of the time make it a great choice for getting in some cruiser laps or expert terrain. This gets the lift a 4.5 out of 5.
Wild Blue Gondola. This Doppelmayr D-Line 10-person gondola is a monster of a lift. The lift is divided into 2 stages. The first stage was built in 2022 and runs from the base to the Greenhorn Ranch beginner area, while the second stage was built in 2023, connecting Greenhorn Ranch to the top of Sunshine Peak. This lift was built as a third out-of-base lift to relieve pressure off the Christie Peak Express and Steamboat Gondola, since this gondola goes significantly higher than both the lifts. This is by far one of the longest gondolas I've ridden to this day, but the ride time is not that long because of how fast it runs. The first section runs at 6 meters per second, while the second section runs at 7 meters per second, making it a rare multi-stage gondola running at 2 different speeds. The only problem I have with this lift is that the top of Sunshine Peak is relatively small, and unloading 3 lifts on the same peak with not much room to move around on makes things more hectic and cluttered. They did offset the top terminal to where it's not smack in the middle of the other unloading zones to mitigate the issue as much as possible, but those are just my observations. Besides that, this gondola is a huge game changer for Steamboat, and it's just the beginning of several other transformational investments in the resort. This lift gets a 4 out of 5. I bet you're wondering how our worst to best list has changed over the years, so I'll show it to you as I end this video. Overall, I'm really happy with how this trip to Steamboat turned out. It got crowded a few times, but it's still the same old for me. The Mahogany Ridge expansion is awesome. The Greenhorn Ranch looks so much better than the beginner area at the base, and the base looks so much better now with the new food hall, ice skating rink, and relocated lift terminals, so that we have more room to roam around and hang out on. But yeah, I just wanted to re-rank the lifts at Steamboat because over time my opinion has changed and the new improvements have helped pave the way for that. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. Share your thoughts about Steamboat in the comments as always, And let me know if you agree with my previous list or if this list is even better. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. Until next time.